They say you can judge a company's priorities by what they spend money on. Ours spent 6 figures on a meditation room with Himalayan salt walls while the accounting software still crashed every Tuesday like clockwork. The warning signs were there from day one, but I stayed because for 8 years, I was the safety net they never acknowledged. I'm Jane, and I kept the books balanced while management played startup cosplay. The trouble started when Vincent promoted his wife Diana to Chief Financial Officer after she completed an online course in digital finance leadership that took her 3 weekends. This woman had been selling essential oils on Instagram 6 months prior, and suddenly she was restructuring our entire financial infrastructure. She waltzed into our first quarterly review wearing a blazer that screamed, "I bought this at Target's business section," and opened with, "Numbers don't lie, but they can definitely be more authentic." I watched her fumble through basic Excel functions while explaining her vision for intuitive accounting. She looked at our depreciation schedules like they were written in ancient Sanskrit and asked if we could just simplify the math to make it more user-friendly. When I tried to explain why certain compliance procedures existed, she waved me off with, "That's very old-school thinking, Jane. We're pivoting to solutions that feel more organic." Still, I kept quiet. Because someone had to catch the errors she made when she streamlined our payroll system by deleting what she called redundant backup files. Someone had to manually reconcile accounts when her new automated system double-charged our biggest client for 3 months running. Someone had to work weekends fixing the mess she called optimization. But before I dive into the spectacular meltdown, do me a favor and hit that subscribe button. Only 3% of viewers actually subscribe, and it keeps these stories coming. Trust me, you'll want to see how this corporate house of cards falls. The morning everything unraveled, Diana strutted into our 9 a.m. financial review meeting clutching a green smoothie that looked like liquefied money. She just returned from a transformative leadership retreat in Sedona and was practically vibrating with the kind of confidence that comes from paying $3,000 to have strangers validate your ideas in a desert. "Team," she announced, setting her drink down like she was placing the Holy Grail on our conference table, "we're entering a new paradigm. I've been doing some deep thinking about our financial architecture, and honestly, it's giving very rigid, very yesterday." The room went dead silent. Even the coffee maker seemed to pause mid-brew. She clicked through a presentation that looked like it was designed by someone who just discovered fonts. "We're going to sunset these legacy reporting structures and embrace a more fluid, intuitive approach to financial stewardship. I want everyone to feel empowered to challenge traditional accounting norms." What she meant was, "I don't understand any of this, so we're throwing it all out." I sat there thinking about the quarterly tax filings I'd personally shepherded through 3 different software migrations, because Diana kept changing systems without understanding what any of them actually did. I thought about the audit trail I'd painstakingly maintained that was the only reason we passed our last compliance review. And I thought about the employment contract Diana had signed without reading, the one that explicitly stated my custom reconciliation protocols were proprietary intellectual property. She ended the meeting with a finger gun and, "Let's disrupt some spreadsheets, people. The future waits for no one, except it does, Diana, and it waits with a calculator." 3 days later, the meeting request appeared in my calendar like a tumor. Subject, Quick Chat HR. No agenda, no context, just a 4 p.m. time slot that might as well have been labeled execution time. I'd watched this dance before. The casual scheduling, the forced smiles, the way HR suddenly develops amnesia about your contributions once someone higher up decides you're inconvenient. They never fire you in the morning when you're fresh and might fight back. No, they wait until you're tired and ready to go home. I walked into the conference room and there she was, Diana, perched on a chair like she was posing for a LinkedIn motivational post. Her fake concern was so thick I could practically taste the artificial sweetener in the air. "Jane. So glad you could make it," she chirped, crossing her legs like she'd just learned the gesture from a YouTube video on executive presence. "This won't take long." Beside her sat Marcus from HR, looking like he'd rather be anywhere else in the universe. He slid a manila folder across the table like it might spontaneously combust. "As part of our organizational evolution," Diana began, her voice dripping with corporate speak she'd memorized from business podcasts, "we're realigning certain traditional roles to better sync with our forward-thinking vision." Translation, "You make me look stupid, and I can't have that." I didn't react. Didn't flinch. Just listened as she continued her rehearsed speech about new directions and fresh perspectives and building a more agile financial culture. The youth card was coming, I could see it in her eyes like a poker tell. "We really value your years of experience," she said, pausing like she was trying to remember what exactly I did all day. "We're just moving toward a more collaborative, more innovative approach. Something more dynamic." Marcus slid the severance agreement forward. "Standard package, 3 months COBRA, outplacement services if I sign by Friday." I scanned the legal language muscle memory from the contract reviews I used to do before Diana decided lawyers were too negative. Diana leaned forward with that practiced smile of someone who thinks they just pulled off the perfect crime. "Any questions?" I looked her straight in the eye. "Just one thing," I said, folding the papers neatly. "You have 48 hours. She blinked, clearly not expecting that response. "I'm sorry." I stood up, removing my badge and placing it on the table like I was laying down a winning poker hand. 48 hours before the reconciliation system crashes, before the automated payments start bouncing, before the audit flags start multiplying like rabbits. Her face twitched almost imperceptibly. I leaned closer, voice calm as a lake before a storm. "This isn't revenge, Diana. I'm just done fixing things you broke while taking credit for systems you don't understand." Then I walked out. No shouting, no threats, just the soft click of heels on polished concrete and the faint sound of a dozen financial safeguards beginning their countdown to chaos. I didn't go straight home. Instead, I walked 3 blocks to Cornerstone Cafe, ordered a black coffee and a blueberry muffin I wasn't hungry for, and settled into a window seat where I could still see the 10th floor of our building. The lights were on like nothing had changed, like there wasn't a financial time bomb ticking away in their servers. My phone sat face down on the table. No frantic calls yet, no last-minute negotiations. Just silence and the bitter taste of coffee that actually tasted good for once, probably because it wasn't office sludge brewed in a machine that hadn't been cleaned since the Clinton administration. Maybe I should have left instructions. An anonymous email to someone in accounting, a heads up to our external auditor. Maybe I should have documented every shortcut Diana called efficiency improvements, and every warning she labeled unnecessarily cautious. But I didn't. I sat there staring at that glass tower and felt something that might have been guilt creep in sideways. Except they chose this. Diana chose flashy over functional, chose confidence over competence. And Vincent handed her the keys like she was some kind of financial savant instead of someone who thought liquidity was a smoothie ingredient. They never bothered to learn how the system actually worked. They didn't want to know about the midnight reconciliations I ran to catch billing errors before clients noticed. They didn't want to hear about the time I caught a potential embezzlement scheme because I actually read the transaction logs. They didn't care that I'd quietly fixed their mistakes for years while they took credit for our exceptionally clean books. They wanted invisible competence. They got it. It started with a hiccup. 1 payment processor rejected, then 3, then 17. The automated payroll system began flagging duplicate entries like confetti at a bankruptcy party. Client invoices started bouncing back with error codes that might as well have been fortune cookies predicting financial doom. From my corner table at Cornerstone, I watched the building's lights flicker as people stayed late trying to figure out why everything was suddenly broken. The company's internal status page, which I still had bookmarked, began showing red flags like a communist parade. My phone buzzed. First text from Lisa in accounts payable. "Jane, weird question, but do you know why the recurring payments are all failing validation?" Then David from collections. "Hey Jane, are you seeing this? The aging reports are showing everything as overdue even for current accounts." Then Vincent's assistant Patricia, who once brought me homemade cookies during tax season. "Jane, I know you're not with us anymore, but please, where are the backup reconciliation files?" I stared at the messages, thumb hovering over the keyboard. The temptation to help was muscle memory, but I didn't respond. Not yet. Instead, I opened my laptop and checked the old team chat, the one Diana had disbanded because it was too negative and not aligned with our positive energy goals. My former colleagues had found each other again, naturally. Alex, senior accountant, anyone else notice that Jane's departure coincided with literally everything breaking? Rachel, accounts receivable coincidence? She was the system. Without her patches, we're running on financial duct tape. Tom, payroll, how long before Diana blames this on legacy infrastructure and calls it a learning opportunity? Then a new name appeared in the chat. Diana herself. Diana, hi everyone. Let's please keep conversations solution-focused. We're all learning and growing together. Sparkles #positive vibes only. I actually laughed out loud, earning a look from the barista. I leaned back in my chair, laptop balanced on my knees, and watched the empire I'd held together with spreadsheet formulas and weekend work start to crumble like a house of credit cards. 48 hours. It had only been 36. The breach notification hit Vincent's phone during his lunch meeting with potential investors. He was mid-sentence in his pitch about rock-solid financial infrastructure when his phone started buzzing with alerts he'd never bothered to understand before. A cascade of compliance violations, failed audit checks, and regulatory red flags that I'd been manually preventing for years. The automated systems weren't broken, they were just functioning exactly as designed, without someone constantly intervening to compensate for Diana's improvements. By the time Vincent reached his office, the CFO he'd promoted based on charm and family ties was standing in the accounting department looking like she'd just been told her essential oil business model was a pyramid scheme. "What's happening?" he demanded, tie loosened, that vein in his forehead doing its angry dance. Diana gestured helplessly at computer screens full of error messages she couldn't read. "It's these legacy systems. Jane must have sabotaged something before she left." "Jane left 2 days ago," Vincent snapped. "I know, but her processes were so convoluted, so unnecessarily complex. She made herself indispensable on purpose." "She was indispensable," he said, voice rising. "That's why I told you not to fire the person who actually kept our books clean." The silence that followed was deafening. Even the air conditioning seemed to pause for dramatic effect. One of the junior accountants cleared his throat. "Sir? She didn't sabotage anything. We checked. The systems are just operating normally now." "What does that mean?" "It means she was fixing things manually. Constantly. She didn't break anything, she just stopped preventing everything from breaking." Vincent's face went the color of an overdue notice. Diana looked like she was physically shrinking inside her blazer. And somewhere in a cafe with decent Wi-Fi and coffee that didn't taste like corporate despair, I opened my email to find 247 unread messages. Subject line screaming urgent, please respond, and my personal favorite, we need TO talk ASAP. One message caught my eye. From a law firm I'd heard of, but never dealt with. Subject, consulting opportunity forensic accounting. I didn't smile, but I did order another muffin. The lawyers circled like vultures in Armani suits. Within 72 hours, they'd uncovered the deleted compliance folders, the streamlined audit trails that violated 3 different regulations, and one particularly damning Slack message from Diana that read, "Jane's obsession with documentation is slowing down our innovation. Just archive the old stuff, nobody reads it anyway." Turns out regulatory bodies read it very carefully indeed. The external auditors who'd been praising our exceptionally maintained records for years suddenly realized those records had been maintained by exactly one person, the same person Diana had dismissed as stuck in the past. Without my constant reconciliations, the discrepancies that had been invisible started glowing like neon signs. Their main business loan, the one secured by demonstrating consistent financial controls? The bank called it in. Apparently, our CFO fired the person who actually understood our finances, wasn't the reassuring update they'd hoped for in their quarterly review. Diana's response was predictably tone-deaf. A company-wide email about embracing change and growing through challenges that included the phrase, "This is actually a blessing in disguise." The only blessing was that she'd finally revealed herself to be exactly as incompetent as I'd known her to be from day one. Then came the personal appeals. Diana's first message arrived with the subject line, "Coffee soon." As if 8 years of professional condescension could be smoothed over with a latte and fake sincerity. Then Vincent himself, "Jane, I realize we may have acted hastily. Would you consider consulting with us on a transition plan?" Even the board reached out through intermediaries, testing the waters for what it might cost to bring me back. The answer was simple, my dignity wasn't for sale, and my expertise came with a price they couldn't afford, genuine respect. I responded to none of them. But when Diana cornered me outside my apartment building on a Thursday evening, mascara streaked and desperation radiating from her like cheap perfume, I finally broke my silence. "Jane, please," she started, voice cracking. "I know I made mistakes. I didn't understand what you were protecting us from. Can we just talk?" I stopped walking and turned to face her. For a moment, she looked almost human, not the polished influencer persona, just a scared woman who'd finally realized she was drowning in water too deep for her. "Diana," I said calmly, "you didn't fire me because I was incompetent. You fired me because my competence made your incompetence obvious. That's not a mistake, that's a choice." She opened her mouth to respond, but I held up a hand. "The company is failing because you spent months dismantling systems you didn't understand. I'm not responsible for fixing that. You are." I turned and walked into my building, leaving her standing on the sidewalk with the weight of her own decisions. The subpoena arrived on a Tuesday morning, delivered by a courier who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. Clean white envelope, law firm letterhead, my name typed in that official font that means business. "Jane Morrison is hereby requested to provide expert testimony in the matter of shareholders versus Eldridge Industries, et al." I read it twice. They weren't coming after me. They wanted me to explain how a functional financial department had been systematically destroyed by someone who thought synergy was an accounting principle. The irony was perfect. Diana's attempt to eliminate the person who made her look bad had created the exact paper trail that proved how bad she actually was. Every deleted file, every ignored warning, every simplified process that violated basic accounting standards, it was all there in black and white. I'd kept copies of everything, naturally. 8 years of covering for executive incompetence had taught me to document every interaction, every decision, every moment when I'd been overruled in favor of innovation. The deposition was scheduled for the following month. I'd finally get to tell the truth about what it takes to keep a company's finances running when leadership treats accounting like an optional hobby. That evening, I opened a bottle of wine I'd been saving for a special occasion and sat on my balcony watching the sunset. The irony wasn't lost on me. I was more financially secure now, freelancing for clients who valued expertise, than I'd ever been working for people who took it for granted. My phone buzzed with one final message from Diana. "Please. I know you hate me, but don't destroy innocent people's jobs." I stared at the screen for a long moment, then typed back, "I'm not destroying anything, Diana. I'm just finally telling the truth about what you destroyed." Then I blocked her number and poured myself another glass of wine. Vincent's empire of nepotism and business buzzwords collapsed with the quiet efficiency of a controlled demolition. No explosions, no drama, just the inevitable result of replacing competence with connections and expertise with enthusiasm. Diana lasted another 6 weeks before the board quietly transitioned her to pursue other opportunities. Her farewell post on LinkedIn was a masterpiece of delusional corporate speak, grateful for the growth, the challenges, and the incredible learning opportunities. Sometimes the universe has bigger plans. Sparkles #next chapter #growth #blessed. The comment section was a war zone of former employees and industry contacts who'd watched her destroy a functional company in real time. I didn't participate, I didn't need to. The truth was speaking loudly enough on its own. Vincent lasted another month before the board forced him out too. Turns out promoting your unqualified wife to CFO and then firing the person who actually knew how to do the job isn't considered sound business judgment by fiduciary standards. Who knew? As for me, I testified. Clearly, factually, without emotion or vindictiveness. I explained how financial systems work, why certain procedures exist, and what happens when you remove the safeguards without understanding their purpose. I presented documentation of every warning ignored, every shortcut that created compliance violations, every moment when ego overruled expertise. The shareholder's attorney asked me one question I'll never forget. In your professional opinion, could this financial collapse have been prevented? Yes, I answered. By not firing the person who was preventing it. The settlement was substantial. Not for me, I was just a witness, but for the investors and employees whose retirement funds had been obliterated by Diana's innovative financial management. I used my consulting fees to take a month-long vacation in Italy, where I ate real pasta and read books that had nothing to do with accounting. No laptop, no financial statements, no corporate emergencies that could only be solved by the person they decided was expendable. Sometimes revenge isn't about destruction. Sometimes it's about stepping back and letting incompetence reveal itself. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is stop covering for people who never deserved your protection in the first place. Diana learned that lesson the hard way. Vincent learned it too. And somewhere in a vineyard outside Florence, with a glass of Chianti and a view that no corner office could match, I learned something too. competence has its own kind of power, and dignity is always worth more than a paycheck. They wanted to make me disappear. Instead, they made themselves expendable. That's the thing about firing the person who keeps your world running. You don't realize how much they were holding together until gravity takes over. The moral of the story? Don't mistake quiet competence for weakness. And never ever fire someone whose expertise you don't understand, especially when your entire operation depends on skills you don't possess. Thanks for listening to this corporate cautionary tale. If this resonated with you, hit that subscribe button, because there are plenty more stories about what happens when ego meets reality in the modern workplace.